Venerable Master, Venerable Ajahn Sumedho, Venerable members of the Shangah, Dharma friends, Amitofo, 师父上人, Sumedho 法师, 各位同参道友, 各位朋友, 大家阿弥陀佛. All of you who would like to hear a translation into Mandarin have your headsets, is that correct? 要听中国话的人都有耳机, 是不是? Yes, is that a yes? I'm not hearing anything. We wanted to maximize the time that Ajahn Sumedho has to speak with us, so we thought to have simultaneous translation. So everyone who needs a headphone, Alan is providing them here. All right, and we have a simultaneous translation. So our Venerable role model in cultivation, Ajahn Sumedho, can speak without interruption. So my name is Heng Sure, and I get the opportunity to do a very short introduction here. And I think many of us have histories and cherished memories with Longpo Sumedho, with our Venerable Dharma friend, Dharma brother and good advisor. But I'm going to just give a short personal reflection. And the details of his life, I think, are well known. They're on the programs and the advertisements that have been going around. But I just wanted to say something about how deep the affinities with the City of 10,000 Buddhas and with Master Shren Hua, our Dharma friend today, our guest and family member. In 1980, I had returned from pilgrimage. It took 2.5 years to get here, and had been arrived and was bowing. And it was time for the Winter Chan retreat, our annual meditation retreat that we do in silence for 3 weeks. And at one point in the Winter Chan retreat, Master Shren Hua, our founder here and our Venerable Abbot, said, come over here. He said to me, I want you to meet someone. And I walked over, and there was this very tall, and I have to say rather stern-looking American monk. He looked no nonsense. He looked like someone who had actually, in the language that we would use, someone who had actually resolved his mind on cultivation of the way. Someone for whom bodhicitta was a reality. And Master Hua said, this is Ajahn Sumedho, he said. He has been through a famine in India and survived. He has walked all over Thailand. He's an American who has resolved to leave home and cultivate long before you even heard of the Dharma, he said, speaking to me personally. He said, you should bow to him and take him as your role model in cultivation, he said. So how important was that image given to me of the American monastic Sangha already taking roots in Western soil. So that was my first introduction to Ajahn Sumedho. And another image that I wanted to share with everyone was when our teacher, Venerable Master Shren Hua, was in the last days in this body and was on his way to entering nirvana not long, I got the message that I should find out if Ajahn Sumedho was in the country. And so I made a few phone calls. I think I called Ajahn Amaro was in San Francisco at the time. Amaravati didn't exist at that point, or Abhayagiri didn't exist at that point. So I called and they said, yes, in fact, Ajahn Sumedho is here, he's visiting. So I said, would it be possible for him to come with me down to Los Angeles and pay a visit on Master Hua? And so I was able to communicate that to Ajahn Sumedho, and he said, yes, I would like to go. And so we went down on Southwest Airlines, myself and Ajahn Sumedho, down to West Covina and to where Master Shren Hua was there. And they exchanged some pleasantries and affirmed that in past lives they had been what in Chinese are called tongcan daoyou, fellow cultivators on the path in past lives, and how they knew each other. And Master Hua said, I understand that Ajahn Amaro and yourself have been looking for a suitable home for the Thai Forest Sangha in America. Ajahn Sumedho said, yes, yes. And Master Hua said, well, we have a piece of a mountainside. It's pretty rugged. It's suitable only for monks. And I wonder whether you would accept that as your new home. And Ajahn Sumedho said, why, yes, we would, he said. And that was the official beginning of what is now Abhayagiri. So those are some very deep and personal memories that I have regarding our, as they say, Venerable Father, Longpo Sumedho, and I would like to invite him now to share his Dharma wisdom with us, please.
Chant a verse in Pali. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Aparuta de sangama tassa tawaraye suravanta bamunjantu satang. So, with respect to Venerable Heng Sure, Heng Lu, and the Shangah present, lay people, it's a real pleasure to revisit City of 10,000 Buddhas. I've been retired, if monks can retire, and live in Thailand, returned to Thailand for the past 4 years. And there I lived quite a reclusive life in a forest monastery. So then I promised Ajahn Amaro on my 80th birthday I would come to Amaravati for the celebration of that event, which will be on the 27th of July in Amaravati in England. So this also since I'll be 80 years old complete by that time, my sister is also 82 years old. I wanted to see her, and she lives in Vancouver, Washington. So I went to visit my sister, went many other places to Canada, and so my traveling days I've been on the road now for over a month, traveling from one place to another. And then coming to Abhayagiri, I particularly wanted to visit Thanajan Pasanno and the monks, his disciples at Abhayagiri, and also because I particularly wanted to visit City of 10,000 Buddhas, because it's due to the generosity of the great Master Zhuanhua that Abhayagiri has been established. Without that, it wouldn't be here. And I've always felt this strong connection of different traditions, from the Thai forest tradition to the Chinese Mahayana tradition. In the world now, there's, like in England, for example, where I lived many years, there's every representative almost of every Buddhist tradition that you can possibly conceive of, as well as modern interpretations, psychotherapy, Buddhist psychotherapy, and New Age adaptations to Buddhist teaching. So it's a very impressive time to see the interest in this very ancient teaching. People often wonder why, an ancient religion, what has it to offer a modern, industrial, technological, affluent society? Why suddenly this interest in countries like the United States? Why was there suddenly this great interest in Buddhism? And I've been very much a part of that since 1955. I think I became interested in Zen Buddhism as I was in the U.S. Navy at the time, and I was on a ship that would sail between San Francisco and Japan. It was through this very beginning stage of just what was available in English language about Zen Buddhism. And of course it did offer a challenge to the mind, because speaking for myself, I've been brought up in a very kind of ordinary middle-class Christian family in the United States with a mindset, the conditioned thoughts are very much arranged in a certain way in that particular cultural conditioning, in that environment. And somehow one felt this sense of something that has to be more than just this rigidity of black and white, heaven and hell, good and bad, in such absolute terminologies. There had, you could sense there had to be more to life than just this dualistic rigidity that was very much my straitjacket, my mental, intellectual straitjacket at the time. And it's sort of an intuitive feeling that there'd be more to life than just identifying everything in terms of good and bad, right and wrong. And of course the initial interests of Zen Buddhism, it started with kind of being fashionable and slightly superficial, but it was interesting. And the beatnik interest, the beat Zen and so forth, it all contributed in so many ways towards an awakening in many of us. So even though we can, criticize the early stages, I've always been incredibly grateful to that beginning, because it was a transformation, a change in my own life, and a hope and an interest generated from that first meeting with Zen Buddhism. Now this is I've been a monk now nearly, altogether 49 years, and so most of my life has been within the robe. And of course it's been truly a wonderful lifetime looking back, because having such an occasion and an opportunity to live my life in such a good way, I never really expected it, even in my wildest fantasies, that my life would such doors would open for me, and such opportunities to understand, to practice the Buddha's teaching. And so looking back over these years of life, at 80, you're definitely the old man, and you have a lot of memories from your past, and these memories now generate into a sense of incredible gratitude and joy at the opportunity that I've had to live this life in this very fine way, and interesting way, leading onward towards developing a wisdom faculty that in the beginning I had no awareness of at all. But there was this intuitive sense, something in me. I remember when I first came across Zen Buddhism, just reading a few pages of a D.T. Suzuki book, my interest, my faith in Buddhism almost responded immediately. It was spontaneous. And I didn't know why at the time, because if you'd have asked me to explain what it was, I wouldn't be able to tell you anything. It was just a feeling or something or other, because we didn't have any words or understanding of it on the intellectual level, but it was a strong intuitive breakthrough. At least I found something that was some kind of conventional form that could explain or lead me toward a way of life that I could respect and that I could actually practice. At first I thought of Buddhism as merely another kind of interesting religion, being brought up as a Christian, your attitude towards other religions is dismissal. You just kind of dismiss all the other religions and believe what you're told about, what the priest says or your parents think. And so that was very much the attitude that my social background provided me with. But I also recognized that people didn't know anything about Buddhism, Western people. It's easy to just dismiss it because you didn't know what it was about. It's just some strange religion in China that you could easily say, well, it's maybe good for them, but what has it got to do with my life? But the thing is that the Buddhist teaching, is a universal truth. It's not based on cultural conditions. And that's why it resonates at a time like this in a country like the United States. Highly advanced technology, science. We've developed the democratic institutions and all these worldly conditions based on high-minded thinking ideals and so forth, and clever intellectual exercises and abilities to manipulate phenomena in ways that we can bend it to our will and make it do what we want. But we've not developed wisdom. And so in the Buddhist teaching, wisdom then is not an intellectual exercise that you just learn wise sayings of the Buddha from the scripture, but you actually emphasize the practice, making it work, making it real for you. And this is what I found so skillfully done in Thailand with Ajahn Chah, Luang Por Chah. This was in 1967. I met him. I'd already ordained as a samanera and in another place in Thailand and been practicing meditation in a kind of isolated environment, just by myself in a little hut. And then I had a very good experience with that, to where I realized I needed to take the bhikkhu ordination, higher ordination, for the training, to be under an authority, to not just live my life isolated from everyone else, but I had to learn how to integrate this practice into life within a group, the Shangah. So then I met disciple of Ajahn Chah, and when I became a fully ordained monk, they took me to meet Luang Por Chah. And during that year as a samanera, I developed a lot of insight just reflecting on the initial sermon of the Buddha, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Four Noble Truths. And during that year, I just had this one little book, a little pamphlet from Sri Lanka, the Kandy Publishing Society, called Word of the Buddha, and it was a German bhikkhu had published it and had taken the important teachings from the Tripitaka and put them in this manageable book. It was not very big, but everything that you needed to know in order to put it into practice was there. So I had that with me. I didn't take any other books because I didn't want to distract myself. I could only read, if I was going to read, I had to read about the Four Noble Truths. And so during that time, of course, the first Noble Truth is about dukkha, or suffering. And so, after the initial kind of high of being alone and away from all worldly pressures, that lasted about 2 or 3 days. Then I was stuck with myself for 24 hours a day for almost a year. Just, they bring me the food, 1 meal a day, and I couldn't speak the language, and nobody could speak English, so I was just dependent on practices, is what they call in Thai khao hong, where you enter a little hut or kuti, and then you're not supposed to go anywhere else, you're supposed to stay there. And you can go outside and do walking meditation, but you're not expected to attend meetings or anything else. So there was, this American Samanera novice in this little hut in northeast Thailand with this one book. Try to imagine what that'd be like. And I didn't have anyone to talk to. No telephone, radio, television, there's no electricity, nothing. Just a basic hut. But it did, using this formula of the Four Noble Truths, this was what I was interested in doing, why I put myself in such a situation, because before, I lived in Bangkok, I was teaching English at a university there, and then I met all the kind of expatriate Buddhists that were available at the time in Bangkok. There were Americans or British people who were in Thailand who were interested in Buddhism, and so I'd meet with them and we'd have discussions, and they all had very strong views about who was the best teacher and who isn't any good, and I became totally confused living in Bangkok, listening to the views and opinions of expatriates. So I fled Bangkok, actually ran away, and didn't tell anybody where I was going. Ended up in Nong Khai, which is the province that borders on Laos, where if you go to Vientiane in Laos, you have to go through Nong Khai. So I was there. I had to go to Laos first in order to renew a visa to re-enter Thailand. And then in Nong Khai, I spent the first Pansa, 1966, in this forest monastery. Now what happens, when your life has been one where you've been constantly distracted, you live a life of you read. I was an avid reader of books, radios and television and all the other things, and so there was endless opportunities for distraction. I'd been in university life. I'd been a student in Berkeley, and one had developed up to that time and through this distracting the mind endlessly through available and oftentimes interesting, exciting, pleasant opportunities for distraction. And then suddenly you're left alone, no friend, no teacher even, just the word of the Buddha in this little book. And then the monastery, the monks were all eager to quite support me. The nuns were there. So, even though I couldn't talk to them, I didn't know what language, they spoke even a dialect, Northeast dialect. They didn't even speak Thai that you hear in Bangkok. But the aim of the Buddha's teaching is to cultivate this mindfulness. And now I hear all over the Western world this emphasis on the mindfulness is the is the in word, is the word of the day, is the word everybody's using. They suddenly discover mindfulness as something new, another thing to develop or get mindful. And so it's quite interesting that the time has arrived where suddenly Western world, in modern psychology, psychotherapy, I know in London, psychotherapists there that I know are all talking about mindfulness, where, say, 20 years ago, nobody used, the psychotherapist ever used that word. It wasn't a word that they used to describe anything they did. So now it's the inward. But this is the point that the Buddha made, because we are caught in the realm of continuous changing condition phenomena. And, we have these physical bodies, we have senses, we have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, we have retentive memory, we have to remember all the things that we did in the past. We have the ability to learn about other things, to study, to get university degrees, to learn technology, science, history, you name it. Everything is available now to acquire knowledge from texts from outside. And so we've developed that ability to acquire knowledge. It's like our universities, our schools are about acquiring knowledge, about getting to know all about phenomena, different types, which is the best or the worst, right or wrong, the highest, the lowest, whatever. And of course, this has made us very much divided in how we see each other. We depended on, on agreeing on the same views, and if we don't agree, then that disagreement creates friction. We have wars, conflicts, contests endlessly about just what this group believe in and what the other group believe in. Now mindfulness then, and Pali, the Pali word sati, is establishing that awareness present here and now, not something you get. You don't become mindful, you are mindful. It's so immediate that even an attempt to define it can be very misleading. The ability to just be attentive to the present moment. And then the sati sampatanya is like ability to apperceive, to embrace all in the present. It's not about being mindful particularly of one object that you focus on, but on the totality of this moment. So the sati sampatanya is like mindfulness, intuitive awareness, because I call it intuitive awareness. But it's our ability to open to the present moment, which includes everything, that at this moment, and whatever your body, your breath, your sensory experience, your emotional state, your memories or whatever, it's not about right or wrong anymore. It's just an inclusive reality of conditioned phenomena changing. And our relationship to that phenomena then is knowing it in terms of what it really is, like just all conditions are impermanent. And so in the Vipassana, insight practice is all about reflecting, observing impermanence or changing. So in the Pali tradition, we have this continuous repetition, sape sankarani cha, all conditions are impermanent. Now it's easy enough to understand that intellectually, it doesn't take long to kind of agree to that intellectually, but to actually practice that, to relate to phenomena that we're experiencing in the present by awareness of its change rather than of its quality, or whether it's pleasant or painful, exciting or boring or whatever. So changing from somebody who's looking for happiness, excitement, interesting life, entertainment, distraction, running away from boredom or anxiety, worry, fear, running away from anger or greed, lust, or conditions of this nature, we're actually observing them from the position of Buddha or Puto, or knowing, mindfulness, knowing the nature of conditioned phenomena. So in Luang Por Chah's use this mantra, the very simple mantra Puto, as a way we develop, because it's a two-syllable word and it's the actual name of the Buddha, but it's in Pali they use it as in a mantric form, so Puto, and then, but it's the refuge that we take when we're mindful. We're in that refuge of Buddho, or the refuge of the Buddha. And that's what mindfulness allows us to be, in that refuge. And what is a refuge? But it's always a safe place to be. When you seek refuge, you're looking for some place you feel secure and safe, and you actually are. You're not trying to, with Buddha as a refuge, it's not a kind of fantasy or a make-believe refuge. It's actually the reality of awakened consciousness to the present moment. There is no refuge that's safer than that. And then in the refuge of Dhamma, Dhammo, it's like once there's established this knowing, this mindful apperception of conditioned phenomena, then we know, we actually know Dhamma, not from our views and opinions that we get from books or teachers, but from our own insight, profound understanding into reality. And then Sangho is those practicing Dhamma, those who actually developing, cultivating the Dhamma, those who practice in the right way directly. So when I first ordained in this Theravada tradition, I didn't really know much about it. And then I had the Zen introduction that I had. I was a very avid reader of Aldous Huxley at the time when I was a student at Berkeley. And he actually puts down Theravada Buddhism. Says that they haven't produced any arahants other than the Buddha. And that, he really vilifies Theravada. So I thought, I'm not going to bother with that. He said, all they do, the monks, Theravada monks do, is try to keep rules. They think that you can just keep rules and become enlightened. So that to someone, graduate student at Berkeley, living at a time where you throw out all the rules, Theravada doesn't sound very interesting. It's more, like, I remember in Berkeley at the time, they're always quoting the prophet, about follow your heart wherever it takes you. And I saw so many people doing that, and it didn't take you to very good places. So it's kind of inspiring, that's what, sounds so poetic and beautiful, but, where keeping rules, about, and some of the rules we keep are about all kinds of things that, you don't think anyone would make a rule about. So it's strange, going from the Berkeley scene into this very strict Orthodox Northeast Thai monastery where they keep these rules even to the smallest detail. But then the reason for doing this was because, the experience of living a life, a hedonistic life, just on following your desires, impulses, ideas, and that the result was I became a very confused person. By the time I finished my degree, I was totally confused. and also disappointed, like there's a lot of aversion, self-criticism, a kind of aversion to myself. I didn't like what was happening to me and what I'd become. And so then this interest in Buddhism was like the light at the end of the tunnel. It was the only hope I had, which brought me into Thailand and into the Thai forest tradition. And then I found myself in the very strict form, almost totally opposite to the life I'd been living before. But then the value, this is one thing that modern life doesn't understand about tradition and form. It's like ideals. We create ideals by thinking in superlative ways. The very best, the purest, the brightest, and we create images of perfection. But life for us is not ideal, is it? It's the way it is. We have to live in a human body that's not an ideal form. It born, grows up, gets old, gets sick, dies. And so it's this changingness. We have to live in the world that is continuously changing. That's not ideal. And so in this way of reflection, the Buddha was pointing to the way things are, not to the way things should be. And we can see in just my lifetime the American ideal of democracy and these wonderful ideals that this country established itself on. There's so much disappointment because even though it was built on ideals, it's never developed wisdom, understanding of the way things are. And if you only create an ideal in your mind, you're going to be disappointed because none of us can. We're not ideals. We're living, breathing, human, feeling forms. We're not like beautiful marble statues that can stay beautiful for a long period of time. They have to deal with sickness, with weakness, with grief and loss and aging and so forth. And so that's why the Buddha established this basic teaching on the noble truth of suffering, or unsatisfactoriness, or whatever, the Pali word dukkha is that which you can't bear, that which is disillusioning or unpleasant in our lives. And so the English word suffering is good enough, you get the point. And this suffering then is raised from a position, because most, we all want happiness, none of us want suffering. We don't. We're looking for happiness, love, security. We want all the best that we can conceive of. And we don't want old age, sickness, death. We don't want anything unpleasant. We'd like life to be fair and good, and everybody be honest and truthful and dependable and honorable, everything. The best words. We'd like life to be like that. But life is not like that. That's our ability to create images of the best. But Dhamma is about reality, the way things really are, the way it is. And so in terms of Dhamma, it's not about the best anymore, it's the way things are. And then the Buddha, in his wisdom, pointed directly at the way conditions really are. They're changing. And over the years in my life as a Buddhist monk and meditator, it's putting this into practice continuously. Whatever happens, whether you're loved or hated, praised or blamed, succeed or fail, all the worldly conditions, they're all seen in terms of, instead of on a personal level, I like success and I like to be praised, I like to be healthy and strong, I don't want to be blamed for anything, criticized, I don't like being criticized at all, and then I want life to be fair, and I want to feel that I'm loved and respected. That's the personal, worldly mindset of human beings, most of us. Then in the terms of Dhamma, we're looking at these conditions in terms of change, not in terms of personal preference or personal inclination. We're no longer taking it in the sense of judging our own personal perceptions of the world and ourselves, but looking at them for what they really are. All conditions are changing, and we become more and more aware of change rather than spending our lives looking for the best monastery, the best conditions, the best teacher, the best of everything. And whatever monastery you're in, you can always imagine a better one. And so, I know this from experience. and no matter how, we might try to establish the best monastery, like Ajahn Sumedho has established the best monastery as far as I'm concerned, but how many of you are really satisfied with it? You can imagine a better one, I imagine. Why are you laughing? So this is like the awakening of conscious awareness to the realities of the present. Now in Second Noble Truth, why did the Buddha take suffering as a noble truth, since it's what nobody wants? And we all think we more or less see it as a nasty fact of life. Suffering, I remember as a little boy, brought up as a Christian, asking my mother, why is there pain? Why did God create pain? If I were God, I wouldn't have created pain. And I don't know how my mother answered that. But it's a good question, isn't it? If God is all love and creates only what's good, why is there so much of the opposite? Well, now this is a question of a child, a little boy questioning about something you don't want. I don't want physical pain. I don't want to feel hurt or anything like that. But then the Buddha takes this ordinary experience, it's a truth that we all can relate to. It's not high, it's not metaphysical height of, philosophical thinking or anything. It's just banal, ordinary suffering that we experience every day. And then putting it in that category of a noble truth, what's noble about suffering is that we change our attitude towards it from blaming it on others, trying to run away from it, seeking happiness, to looking at it, understanding it. So that's a shift, from an unawakened person who's just seeking for happiness in the world, which most people are doing. Security, they want security, want to be loved by somebody, and so forth. They're seeking for an exciting life, because life can be incredibly boring, and so forth. So we're seeking for stimulation, for love, for security, for the best. But so much of our life is boring, isn't it? And it's routine. It's getting up, putting on your clothes, washing your face, brushing your teeth, waiting for the bus. How much of your life is just waiting for something? And now we have, traffic jams. We have to wait in traffic jams, and people complain endlessly. And we've got to improve the transport system and so forth, because we don't like waiting. We want instant results and so forth. This is dukkha, this is suffering. So changing from one who is always trying to get rid of it, change it for the better, ignore it, to one who understands. To understand something, you have to accept it for what it is. Now, accepting doesn't mean you're ever going to like suffering. It's not something you are going to ever like, but it's a noble truth that leads you onward to the reality of non-suffering. And that's the point of the noble truth, because if you follow that teaching, this was the Buddha's first sermon after enlightenment. It's a perfect teaching, actually, because it actually takes something quite ordinary that we can easily see and know in ourselves, and instead of trying to get rid of it or blame our misery or unhappiness on somebody else, we're understanding. Understanding means to accept it for what it is. Rather than seeing it in terms of aversion and blame, you're looking at the suffering as like this feeling of dis-ease. It doesn't have to be extreme, it doesn't have to be some kind of great persecution, being crucified or abused by outer forces. It's about just thinking, worrying, about anxiety, about all the neuroses of modern life, are all about dukkha, suffering. And our relationship to them changes towards understanding. And as I said before, understanding means accepting it is like this. Now, we use this word, it's like this, because we're not describing it or saying it, trying to define it, but recognize this feeling of dis-ease or discomfort or worry or anxiety is like this. And that's mindful of a condition that is present. And if you're willing to bear with that condition, allow it to be what it is, you can actually observe its cessation, because it is impermanent. Worry is impermanent, fear is impermanent, anxiety, anger, hatred, jealousy, well, you name it, all the emotions, everything, all conditioned phenomena is impermanent. And our relationship then is towards observing impermanence rather than trying to hold on to the best and suppress what we don't like. Now this, as I said, is a cultivation of wisdom. And what do we mean in this Buddhist sense of wisdom? Because sometimes we don't really know what wisdom is. And in the Pali language, they use the word panya, which means discerning. It's not a critical function. It's not like your thinking mind is about criticizing, isn't it? This is bigger, it's comparing one thing with another. This is bigger than that. This is better, this is worse. Wisdom is not about criticism, it's about discerning. And so this ability to discern reality from non-reality, discern anger from non-anger, discern anxiety and non-anxiety. That is where wisdom operates. It's mindfulness, with mindfulness, with sati, with sampajanya. And then wisdom is a universal reality. It's not a cultural thing. It's not dependent on language. It's available to us all the time, no matter if we're educated or not. It's not something we don't have or we have to get. It's available to us every moment if we recognize it. So in Buddhist meditation is the emphasis on realizing, recognizing Dhamma, or reality, awake to reality. So the Buddho, or the Buddha, is awakened consciousness of an individual to Dhamma, reality. So in English, I like to use the word reality for Dhamma. In England, I remember people were blaming us sometimes, saying, "You don't live in the real world." I suppose you've heard this one. Escaping reality. And what do you mean by the real world? You know, and they think we live in an ivory tower. You know, Amaravati is an ivory tower where we just blissed out on ethereal pleasure every moment of the day. Or I don't know what they think, but reality is, you know, the real world to many people is just, you know, paying off the mortgage and getting a new car and so on. And, you know, the problems of relationship, marital relationships, and personal relationships, family problems, social problems, political problems, they're endless, aren't they? Where do these ever get resolved, really? You know, in terms of just, you know, it's usually power struggling or dominance of some sort. We manage to force our opinion on somebody else or get our own way, or we get frustrated, we take to drink, drugs, or whatever, as a way to deal with our dukkha, our suffering that we're experiencing. Or the skillful way that the Buddha recommended is to understand suffering, to know, to have insight, let go of the causes of suffering, this ignorance of Dhamma, to let go of just the blind attachments we have to our appearance, to our bodies, to our emotional habits, to our memories, our perceptions. Because these are all very divisive, you know, we have racial prejudices and religious prejudices and all kinds of prejudices. Why? Because we're blindly attached to perceptions we've acquired. They're not based on wisdom or reality, they're based on ignorance, cultural biases, religious biases, and so we get programmed to see things through these distortions, and then we feel anger, hatred towards those that are not like us or don't believe or have the same belief system that we might have. But when we get into Dhamma, that's universal. It's not about culture anymore. It's not about race, gender, or anything else. It's not defined in any conditioned way, but it's realizable. It's reality. It's not something that you lack or have to get. It's just you awaken to it. It's just this. And then if you develop it this way, then you begin to understand the way of non-suffering. And that is like the fourth noble truth, based on right understanding of Dhamma. Then our cultivation of Dhamma is accurate, because once we have that insight into the path, into the way of non-suffering, then we cultivate that in our daily life. And this is one of the great gifts of Shangah life and monastic life, because it's a form to make it easier for us to cultivate this. You know, it like the strict Vinaya practices in the Thai forest tradition, one can criticize from an American liberal mindset, or rather than just criticize it, it's voluntary. I could have left at any time. Nobody was forcing me to stay there, but it was learning how to give up my own personal agendas and views and opinions to live within a structure that I couldn't control or manipulate according to my own views and opinions and wishes. That I found very helpful because it's a tradition. It's not New Age philosophy of somebody who just suddenly comes forth and has some new ideas. This form has managed to survive for over 2,000 years and still is perfectly pure. It's not been corrupted. It's not been destroyed, and that from the time of the Buddha to the present moment. The teaching of Dhamma is pure. It's never been corrupted. Individual monks can be corrupted, but not enough. and then the form, the Vinaya form, when I first, before I went to live in England, for example, I had doubts about how to survive as a Buddhist monk in London. There are not many Buddhists, and I'm not even English, and I've got to live in a huge city, international city, as a Buddhist monk without money or anything, we can't even grow our own potatoes or cabbages. We're kind of helpless creatures, living in a very sophisticated cosmopolitan city where I didn't know anyone or any Buddhists there. So I went to Ajahn Chah. I said, I don't know if this is, I don't know how I'm going to survive. It's not a Buddhist country, and we can't handle money. We can't garden or anything. How do you expect me to survive? And he said, are there kind people in England? And I said, well, yes, I'm sure there are. And he said, go. And this was quite an insight for me, because I realized that Ajahn Chah's attitude towards humanity was that basically we're good and kind. We want to be good and kind. My view from the American conditioning wasn't like that. It was, we're basically selfish, and you have to look out for yourself first. If you don't, nobody else will care. That was my take. Very cynical, I admit. And that's the view I had. Brought up with the work ethic. If you aren't out there making sure you're secure, then you're going to end up as a homeless failure, which nobody wants. It's a dismal prospect. So you've got to make sure you've got money in the bank, life insurance, health insurance, everything provided. And then Luang Por Chah said, are there kind people in England? I said, well, I'm sure there are. And he said, go. And it really awakened me to a change, to see humanity as having that potential, a goodness, a kindness, a generosity that before I wouldn't have even conceived of. So I did. I went, and I've never had any great problems surviving in London or in England or any other place. It's never the requisites necessary for survival, food and robes and so forth were in abundance. We had too much food. I got overweight there. and abundance of material things. England was the first industrialized country in the world. They have a lot of junk there, And so you don't even have to have modern fashionable trends, there's so much extra available stuff around. It's not difficult to survive. And then you're in a society that's religiously tolerant. Britain is incredibly tolerant towards other religions. So I never felt looked down on or marginalized as a Buddhist monk living even in a city like London. Because, we were, the government there is trying to include us in the system. They're trying to include different religions. So, I've been invited about 3 times. I've been to Buckingham Palace and these kind of places you'd never expect to, as a Buddhist monk, to be invited to. And but it's the generosity and the tolerance of surviving in Britain as a Buddhist monk has never been, that part has never been a problem. So today in Britain there is these monasteries. Ajahn Amaro now I've asked him to take on the duties of Amaravati. He was at Abhayagiri for years, helped establish that. Now he's taking on this place in England, and he's doing very well because it's well established. And there's also many Buddhists, many Thai people living in Sri Lankan from Asian countries, as well as British, European, those who are interested especially in meditation. So this, my respect for the Dhamma is over the years has increased to 100%. And I feel that I have put into practice these Four Noble Truths ad infinitum, just pushing them to everything that ever happens to me, getting success or failure, praise or blame, using every event of my life, every form of, that tendency, karmic tendency, personal tendency, good or bad, right or wrong, putting it in that context of the Noble Truths, so that it's like you're from the very refined, emotional, transitional states to coarse emotions and whatnot. You're just observing the impermanence of conditioned phenomena. And now it just seems so obvious, so true, because it is true, it's reality. There's no real self. All your fears, desires, your personal views, they're all conditions changing. You're not anything that you think you are. Don't believe what your mind says. It'll lie to you and deceive you endlessly, but trust in the awareness of it. It's not to destroy the mind, but to understand the nature of phenomena in this characteristic of change. So I offer this as a reflection.
We deeply appreciate how to say the title. Longpo. Also my Upadaya. In 1991, the Venerable Master Hua honored Longpo Venerable Sumedho as our Upadaya. That time we have 2 chant in Pali. Well, I don't know how to chant. We hope you can like a Venerable Xu Yun to live 120 years old. Still 40 years to go. Okay, the Reverend Shi want to give some conclusion.
So, my direct instructions were to follow my role model in the Sangha, and I'd like to just share those with everyone, for all of us here in the city of 10,000 Buddhas, hall of 10,000 Buddhas, to be able to hear our elder monastic Sangha member in the West, Venerable Ajahn Sumedho, is a rare and historic moment for all of us. And as the Dharma comes west, I think it's really significant to point out how as our founder said, tell the south not to run further towards the south and tell the north to turn around from their direction north and we'll all meet in the middle, he said. So this is the best sign of the Buddha Dharma's coming to the West and planting down good roots. And all of you here are part of that, having heard our instructions from our elder monastic, Venerable Longpo Sumedho. So let me, if you will, on behalf of everyone, express gratitude for this opportunity. And perhaps we could do a brief transference of merit and send it out even further. And if you all each in your own way would like to, I have a better idea. Ajahn Pasano, would you lead us in the chant of dedication? May the goodness that arises from our practice. Should we do ours? Okay. All right. So, may the goodness that arises. Okay. So, he gave it to me. Why not? So, let's see. I actually left my guitar. I don't bring my guitar to the city of 10,000 Buddhas. So, how about that? So, but thank you for the invitation. So, let's do it without the guitar. If we could put our palms together and each make a wish and send it as far as your mind can reach with whatever goodness you'd like to share. Those of you who know, please chant along. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Thank you all for coming, and that will conclude this afternoon's program.